What up?
Hello, hello.
Ready.
Perfect.
What's up?
So, okay, so how are we going to add people in and drop people?
So you have to invite people with the
Participants,
link.
and then invite, and then copy URL or copy invitation.
Yeah.
It should be a
Copy
password.
URL is all you need.
Okay. All right. So copy URL, and then I can basically just DM that to somebody back on Zoom.
Yes,
And
exactly.
the URL is the same one. It's the same one for the overall meeting, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Because then I do not need to be on that laptop. I can be on my other one, which is good. And
All right. So
there we go.
all right. So I have the waiting room enabled here. We'll see how it works. I've never used it before. But what should happen according to their docs is whenever someone comes in, you have the participants list open on the right side by clicking on participants. And then
Sorry, what are you saying
you'll
about?
see, okay, so you see the participants button when you're
I do,
down
yes,
there?
and I've got that open.
You've got that open, okay. So when someone comes in,
I can mute somebody or...
it'll say on the right side, it'll say one waiting.
Yep.
And then you can admit them. Basically, yeah.
And then
I mean,
can I also remove them?
Yeah, you'll see admit and remove buttons.
Sweet.
So someone can come on and be ready to go, and then we can work them in, and you can admit them when it makes sense.
It's like 80 degrees today. They're going out in the pool in the back, the swimming pool, or kiddie pool, I should say. Doggy pool, my wife says. Yes. The community pool is conveniently under construction down the street.
It's awesome. You guys can get in the pool already.
No, they're wading pool.
Oh, just the little one. Gotcha.
Yeah. But, just like 6 inches high. It's funny.
Cool.
Oh, she just ran into the wall.
So are we going to have Guy join us for the whole session? We could.
He totally can. It's fine.
We had just planned to have him pop in at some point. But here's Will.
Sweet.
Yes, ma'am. We're coming.
Oh, dude, the source of your power, it's gone.
I took a risk, and we'll see how it pans out.
Man. Dude,
Corey, we both can't do it at the same time, so let me figure out how bad it actually is, the effect of it.
Honestly, I feel like everything just starts going wrong at that point. I'm not going to be allowed to cut my hair. This is actually a wifey choice.
Oh, okay.
You are actually wearing my preferred. I like to be a pretend jock and imagine that I have a game tomorrow and shit, and she's not having it. She's like, "Do you like my long hair?" I'm like, "Obviously." And she's like, "Do you want me to cut it? Do you want me to have a bob?" I'm like, "No." Well, then why shouldn't you look good for me, huh? I'm like, well, all right, fine, whatever.
Damn, that's a hard argument.
I ain't got much to work with the face. At least give me long hair, Shit. So
how's it going, Will? Nice to
good,
meet you, man. I'm Brady.
Nice to meet you, Phil.
That's impossible. You guys have never met?
No, we haven't. I haven't had Will on the podcast yet. Phil hasn't joined. I'm Brady.
That's Citizen Bitcoin right there, Will.
Yeah, he's got a
Okay.
podcast.
Always lead with the Twitter handle. Yeah.
Citizen Bitcoin. Yeah.
Oh, good to
There you
meet
go. Good to meet you too, man.
Yeah.
So-
Somehow I have black holes where people who I, for some reason have not actually run into. Finally, I'm getting more and more in quarantine now. I just had
Right? It's weird,
Rockstar
isn't it?
yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
All right,
Yeah.
Brady, why don't you run through just a couple of your topic ideas for Will? I'll ping Phil and make sure he gets in here.
Yeah, this is easy stuff. Guy Swan is also going to join us. He hosts the Crypto Economy podcast, and he's a huge fan of Fold. He has just kind of signed on to start working with us a little bit, so he's going to hop on and have some questions for you as well. I mean, there are questions about the app and about the privacy stuff we're interested in. Obviously, the card we want to talk about. We have a couple questions coming in. We're going to try something new for the first time. We have a Telegram group. We're going to try to pop some people into our Telegram group to ask some questions. So people want to ask about how you're able to keep KYC so light and seamless. Mainly it's just it's product questions for the most part.
Yeah.
Do you have any Bitcoin topics that you're into and want to talk about right now that you've been thinking about, just like tech or economics, monetary policy, crazy stuff that's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think all the current stuff and how this changes or doesn't change the outlook for Bitcoin and some of the interesting things to keep an eye on is good. Yeah, I mean, let's let it meander. We'll find ourselves.
Really. I wonder if Phil is missing the.
I just telegrammed it to him again.
Oh, here he is. He's in there now.
Cool. And I telegrammed Guy as well. And Will, be ready from Fold and your personal, and Phil too. What's up, dude? How's it going?
Great. How are you guys doing?
Good. I wore that shirt yesterday. My wife keeps stealing it because it's soft, and I'm like, babe, you can't sleep in my Unchained Capital shirt. Like, I need that for podcasts.
It's a really underrated feature of the Unchained Capital shirts is that they are so soft.
It's really
That's true.
solid.
You guys did a good job on that.
Yeah.
That's all our office manager, Sam. I think she sourced them. She's crushing it.
So guys, be ready from Unchained Fold and your personals. Just have them ready to go to retweet this. Just be on the Swan page and ready to retweet when we go live. We always just do that at the beginning. In fact, maybe Brady, just to give people like 20 seconds for that, won't you kick to me and I'll give just a quick Swan update and like a thank you to the early users or whatever. And then that lets everybody do the retweets, including you.
Right on.
So I'll just do like 20, 30 seconds there. And then
so the tweet will pop up on the Swan Bitcoin account, twitter.com/Swan Bitcoin. So you can be watching there for retweet action.
Boom. And yeah, this is going to be fun. I haven't done the video call-in thing for like 4 or 5 months. So I think we're kind of there and we're going to try it and take some questions from the crowd and get some people popping in, maybe some random guests.
Nice.
Sweet.
I would say we'll probably go maybe like an hour 10, something like that. So kind of from now until around 12:15 Pacific.
All right.
Okay.
Let's rock.
All right.
All right, we are live. Welcome everyone to Swan Signal Live. We've got 2 fantastic guests with us today. Will Reeves of Fold. Everyone here will know Fold. Will, welcome to the show, man. Glad to have you.
It's good to be here.
And Phil Geiger from Unchained Capital. Phil, thanks for joining us, man. How's it going?
Going well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And of course, we have Corey Clipston, founder of Swan Bitcoin, Give Bitcoin. Corey, how are you? And how is Swan? Give us a little update on how things are going with Swan.
Hey, Brady. Yeah, no, good to be here. Love, this is like the highlight of my week every Wednesday, just getting in here and talking to awesome Bitcoiners. I'm psyched to hear a little bit more from Phil about the piece he put out last week. And Will obviously had, I think, one of the most exciting announcements, product announcements in the crypto space in Bitcoin of this year. So I'm psyched to hear a little bit more about that. So this is going to be kind of like a shilling episode a little bit, which is awesome. But yeah, quick update on Swan. Obviously, we've been live 2 weeks now, which is just super exciting. We've got our Spartans, got our first 300 users, so that's pretty awesome. Way ahead of where we planned to be 2 weeks in, so really excited about that. People love to set up stacking plans, as we suspected. So shout out to Friar Haas for pushing the DCA narrative like a beast and showing us how many other people out there were that wanted that too. This was something that we had built into the Give Bitcoin product from the beginning, but it became very clear as we progressed that it deserved its own product and its own brand. And so it's just been super exciting to bring that to the fore. And then Brady, we have an announcement of a new team member. If he's ready, we can bring him in. Otherwise, we can just kind of do that later when he joins.
Yeah, I guess he's not ready yet. He's not in the waiting room. So
that was a good. I just
teaser.
onto that thing. It was an announcement of an announcement. So we'll get back to that later in the show. And then I think we're going to try to do video call-ins. So if you're watching this, go to t.me/Swan Signal, which will pop you into the Swan Signal chat room. And I'm going to do the Baba Booey producer thing while Brady actually conducts good interviews and try to grab questions from the audience and maybe have a couple people actually pop in, ask their questions live, and have a little discussion with you guys. So be ready for some randos, and we'll see how this goes. All right.
All right. Thanks, Corey. All right, guys. We got to start with the big news. Will, you guys have launched the card. I think this has been a long time in coming. This is a first on the scene in Bitcoin Sats Back, Bitcoin Rewards. It's really amazing, man. It's really exciting. Tell us about your experience, bringing this thing to fruition, making it a reality. It hasn't been done before, like I said, so I'm assuming that it was quite a lift. Can you tell us about that process?
Yeah, so back in October, September, we launched our Sats Back app to the app stores, and the work to get this card out was well underway even at that time. So it's no understatement to say that it was no small feat. But the cool thing is I have been blown away by Visa's curiosity about the space, the depth of knowledge that they had, and that they were willing to move. And so we worked through them, showing them the data that we were seeing on our end for the demand for such a product, why Bitcoin rewards are fundamentally better than other rewards out there, how this can totally separate them in the market of, commoditized card options. And the value proposition for them was, it took, for someone who talks to retailers all the time, getting their heads around why Bitcoin, Visa was remarkably fast. And so I couldn't imagine a better partner in this. And I think seeing the launch last week, even amidst these crazy times we're in, we had a hell of a response. And so we know, and Visa now knows the latent demand for products like this. So I expect we'll see many more.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. It would be amazing to see, Visa and MasterCard jump in on the game. And I mean, you guys leading the way makes a ton of sense. One of the things that we do at Swan, or kind of one of our strategies, is to be the most recommendable Bitcoin on-ramp, right? Like do things the Bitcoin way, earn Bitcoiners' respect and trust. And I think that, Fold is probably, operating on a similar strategy. And even if big players like that come in the game, the third-party referrals, the organic referrals are going to come to the, the pioneers and those who are like really operating the Bitcoin way, so I know Fold's going to be on that level as well.
Yeah.
All right. We've got, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to add to that because I think that's such an important part about the values of being a Bitcoin only company. So we saw the first wave of adoption coming through mainly via exchanges who exposed newbies to an untold amount of digital assets, and that got them various financial straits for many of them, confused them about the value proposition of what we're coming in. And so ultimately the space was kind of muddled about what are we all doing here? And by going fully on Bitcoin, not only that can you stand behind the value system of Bitcoin, but you also are providing a responsible on-ramp for new people into the space. And I think more and more we are going to see a divergence away from the multi-token pandemonium of the past, and converging on Bitcoin because of the recognition it has, but also as the companies that are doing that know that they are doing being responsible by their customers. And so for me, I think I'm looking forward to more companies like Swan, Unchained, Fold going all Bitcoin.
Absolutely, man. I was just going to say, we've got a representative of another Bitcoin only company here. Phil, Unchained Capital, unapologetically Bitcoin only, just like the other two companies here on Swan Signal Live today. How's it going, man? I saw you drop a new piece on a blog recently. I think it was last week. 21 million is not negotiable. Give us a quick update first on what's going on in Unchained, and then tell us a bit of a summary about your piece. I want to get to it more in depth and a little later, but yeah, just give us like a quick summary and why you wrote it, with the inspiration for it.
Sounds good. Yeah. So at Unchained, we're a Bitcoin native financial services company. So we're doing multi-signature vaults, 2 of 3, where you have 2 keys as a client, and we hold 1 key. So we're helping with retail and businesses as well protect and store their Bitcoin. Then we also have our collateralized loan product. But yeah, I think what we really want to talk about is our interesting blog series. So Parker Lewis, one of my colleagues, has been writing the Gradually Then Suddenly series over the course of the last year, and Dhruv Bansal, one of our co-founders, has been contributing, and I thought I'd throw my hat in the ring with a couple articles, my most recent of which is called 21 Million is Non-Negotiable. So the idea behind 21 Million is Non-Negotiable is I really wanted to break down the question that is still kind of lingering on a lot of people's minds, which is Bitcoin going to be secure post the block reward halving, or post the last Bitcoin being mined? I go through it pretty thoroughly and kind of break down some key concepts and some key assumptions that people are making that I think are incorrect, and then hopefully build a good argument as to why Bitcoin is secure, because it is 21 million and not because of the block reward halving.
Yeah, I love the piece. I just finished reading it this morning. I always give the Unchained pieces a quick skim when they first come out, but it's just, they're always so in depth and dense with great information and takes. So you have to really sit down and spend a good 30-45 minutes really absorbing everything. So it's fresh in my mind. I definitely want to get into the kind of nitty gritty, and because I think you made a ton of great points that just Bitcoiners need to be armed with when this kind of FUD comes up. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Right now, I want to bring in Guy Swan, host of the Crypto Economy podcast. What's up, Guy? You're on Swan Signal Live. How's it going, man? Oh, he's getting his audio up and running.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Turn that volume up a bit.
What is up?
What's up,
All right,
man?
What's up, Guy?
What's up, man? How's it going?
Hey, good to see you.
Yeah.
The Swan team is stacked.
Stacking swans.
Stacking swans. Corey
That's
Corey is maybe the best networker I've ever known. And he's built an incredible network of Bitcoiners and recruited an amazing team. Super proud to work with. And I've been friends with Guy for quite a while now. He was my first Bitcoin friend, I like to say. You really got to know him on a personal level. Love his podcast. It's a great service to Bitcoin. He's the voice of Bitcoin. And in that capacity, he'll be helping us at Swan spread Bitcoin to new audiences. He's going to represent the agents of Swan to media outlets outside the Bitcoin echo chamber. Really excited to have him on board to help us with all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I'm super excited. I'm crazy excited, actually. This is awesome. I appreciate that, y'all reached out to me about this, because I've personally just been kind of excited about Swan Bitcoin because I've wanted that service for so long. And the couple of times it landed, it would go away in no time. I used Lawnmower back in the day. I used Coinbase back when it wasn't stupid expensive and hidden. And before Coinbase was a piece of crap. I don't know. So I don't know. I'm excited to be a part of all this. And you know, Swan, it fits somehow. I don't know.
Awesome, man. Well, welcome to the team. When I saw you pop into the Slack, I was like, oh yeah, he's in the door. Here we go. Guy is in the house. Glad to have you, man. Do you have some questions for Will and Phil before you have to hop off and get back to reading our Bitcoin articles for us?
Yeah. Okay. So, Will, what's up? Hey, man, how's it going? We have not chatted at all. I don't think. Have we had any sort of a conversation up to now? Because I've been following Fold since y'all were just Starbucks on the website.
It's been quite a journey. And again, we were talking with Phil and Brady about how it's weird when you don't have run-ins with people you talk to and talking to every day. And so, I think this is the first one, but your video that you made with Barack Obama was incredible. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been using, since y'all had the app, like I was on before, actually I used the website for quite some time before I even realized that I didn't have an account and I could only get it on that one website, like on my one browser. So I was like, oh my God, how do I get my points from one to the next? While everything was still in beta. I've been using the crap out of it. Every time I go to Starbucks now, like if I'm either using Lightning or my credit card, because it's like, why wouldn't I just stack? Like, how could I not just get 1% back? So on that note, I'm ecstatic about the card, and I'm not exactly sure what y'all have covered yet. But before I get to a question about the card, have y'all thought about, because Breeze is the main wallet that I use, they have that little like marketplace in the actual thing. Have y'all actually talked about and thought about being in the actual marketplace, like right in the store?
So Roy and I have an email thread that goes back and forth for months. And it basically goes like this. Roy's saying, hey, we're ready to get Fold in there. I'm saying, okay, we're going to get to it in a week. And it is just that ping-ponging back and forth for that. Fold we're 5 people. And sometimes we bite off more than we can chew, which means that we have to leave other things on the side, on the side. But Roy, I think Breeze is one of the best wallets out there. That is, I think, our second highest volume of Lightning transactions coming from Breeze. And the
about
user,
half of that is me.
Yeah. And the user experience is amazing. So, I mean, Roy, we'll get to it next week.
Awesome. And I also heard a rumor it landed in the Crypto Economy Crew Telegram that y'all were adding tons of merchants, but in the scope, I didn't realize that y'all were a team of 5. That's pretty amazing what y'all are putting together with that. But what's the future look like for new merchants?
So that was another one that we were looking at the roadmap. What can we do with people that we have? And so we actually prioritized pushing out the Visa work and the card work ahead of rolling out 250 merchants that we already have signed up. And so now it's just rolling those merchants out so that we can actually make them available. But the good part is all of the legwork is done. Heavy lifting is done. Now it's just actually putting them on the platform. And so I would expect now that the announcement gone, that you'll see more and more new merchants start coming through.
Awesome. That's awesome. I'm so excited. Okay, 2 questions about Lightning real quick. Just because Roy talks about this a lot in like his articles, but how has Lightning been, like, because from a user perspective, it's like dirt simple, and like the 2 things that I use more than anything are Fold and Bit Refill. So the network there is like really tight. And I think I've emptied and refilled my wallet like 20 times. And now that I can do it immediately with Strike, like that's going to happen a lot more often, I think. But how has Lightning been from the merchant side of things? What's it like working with managing channels and balancing and all that stuff? Is it a headache?
I mean, so what Fold's approach to this whole to everything right now is to meet merchants and users, consumers, where they're at today. Like, what do they have in their pocket right now that we can integrate them into the Bitcoin economy? How can we immediately do that with as little friction in between? And so that's why the original product works on gift cards. So it allows merchants to experience the demand for Lightning payments, experience the cost savings of Lightning payments without actually having to settle in Bitcoin. And this is an important part. It's because, retailers, very conservative, they have a million things to do, and adding a whole new payment method to their stack is just not a top priority. And so Fold, great way to inject ourselves into the conversation. We start getting executives within the organization talking about the benefits coming through here. When a Fold user is the only one who's not incurring processing fees on behalf of the merchant. They're spending more than their fiat counterpart. And the user on the other end is getting more incentives without any more money coming out of the pocket of the retailer. And so, it's really about showing by doing for a lot of these retailers. And we start the conversation there, as opposed to just saying, we're going to drop a whole new POS system in there and we'll see what happens. It's a ramp up, basically.
Yeah. Nice. And a quick last thing is, what on the horizon in Lightning do y'all think is going to solve the most problems? Like, particularly from y'all's side, is like amps, splicing, aggregation, like that sort of thing. Taproot.
Amps are huge. I mean, we still have issues with, there's a ceiling on how much you can spend on Fold with Lightning. There's still issues with routing issues, and so things like amp, I think, is the number one thing for at least Fold's problems to solve. But Fold is a one-way Lightning connection, right? We're only receiving payments, and that is when you're working with channels to balancing channels. Everyone should know on this call the pains of that. So one thing that we are doing is to make that a circular. So right now, all of the Bitcoin that Fold receives from payments is not sold. It's immediately distributed as Bitcoin to other people using the platform. And so we've done one part of this, creating the circular economy within Fold. Now the next thing is allowing you to withdraw that Bitcoin rewards into your Lightning channel. So that way we can get a much more efficient use of our channels. We can make our lives easier, and we know that a user with Bitcoin on chain versus a user with Bitcoin on Lightning, that Lightning user is already more interested in using it. They'll use more services immediately, and that's kind of the reason why on Fold's app we don't even support on-chain payments right now. We cycle you directly into Lightning.
Nice, awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, dude. I'm so jacked to see. I want to be on. If the higher I can get on that list for the card, just let me know what I can do, because I want that immediately.
I'm not saying there's a side list, but if there was, Guy would be on the top of that list.
Samesies.
This is being recorded.
It's true. It's
Phil,
on record.
What's up, man?
How's it going?
Pretty good, man. How you doing?
Doing pretty well. Good to see you guys. Will, I just have to say, man, I'm super addicted to spinning that wheel. Hold on.
Oh, I haven't spun it today. Oh, I'm
Let's
gonna
see. 100 sats. Look at that.
You almost hit the million. You almost just hit the million.
I was close. Next time.
I'm gonna get 1 million. Wait for it.
The Fold team realized that there was something missing in the Bitcoin space now that we don't have faucets anymore. So we're like, okay, let's make a wheel.
Yeah, it's good. And I love
0.25%.
I love the idea of like every swipe of a card being just one step towards hyper Bitcoinization, right? any amount of sats back is taking that incremental step. So
and even if we can redirect the flow of 10% of rewards being paid out in the US alone, that represents millions of Bitcoin. That's massive buy pressure. So when you start to think of, in a year, we have Swan, who's just owning the DCA game. We have Fold and others with sats back plans, custody, like Unchained, making it easier and easier to do this. The buy pressure, the new buy pressure, not just consumers or retail or institutions coming in, but just that buy pressure is not to be underestimated.
Yeah, and even better is it's a consistent like trickle. It's like a stable consistent growth. Like I will gladly like dump my like Target debit card or whatever that saves me, you know, 3% for 1% in Bitcoin, because if that 3% is in fiat, I'm just going to spend it. But if that 1% is in Bitcoin, I'm going to be much more likely to take that out and put that in cold storage or something later on.
We are looking into this actually about Bitcoin as a tool to create, you know, sound financial decision making in within users. You know, there's a lot of great studies about no loss lotteries, about ways of allowing you to save at the same time as basically saying, do not spend this money.
Yeah.
And the harder you do that, the more you do that, the more that people start to totally change their entire spending behaviors every day to just watch their bag get a little bit bigger. And so I think there is a way, and I hope Fold is a good conduit to do this, or a platform to try this out. But, you know, Bitcoin as a tool to teach great financial practices for a world that has very little of that.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of unscrupulous and degenerate savers on this call today.
Hoarders.
Destroying the economy with our surpluses.
Inflationary spiral.
Speaking of sound finance, I have always been crazy curious, Phil. How, like, what, like for instance, with the recent sudden 50% drop in Bitcoin, how does the Bitcoin-backed loan like work out? What's the risk set up for you guys, and how does that play out in those sorts of situations? Like, are people getting liquidated, or like how does that even happen?
March was a very, very interesting month for Unchained Capital. So when we did see that 50% price crash over the course of, you know, what was it, 8-10 hours? Yeah, some of the leveraged clients that we had ran into trouble with their loans. We saw some liquidations, unfortunately, which we absolutely never want to see. But due to the just extreme price dip, people weren't able to post collateral quick enough.
Mm-hmm.
So one side of our business, that lending side, we did see, you know, we did take a hit on it. On the other hand, the vault side, it was our best month ever in March. So, and actually we published a little bit of HODL Waves data science last month as well, that kind of showed that a lot of the
I saw that.
Yeah, the price crash was coming from coins which had been sitting for generally 1 year or less. And I think just our business being kind of on both sides of that, we could see that on one side, the leverage, the loans did unfortunately take a hit, but on the other side, the vaults and the long-term hodlers have been stacking pretty heavily over the past month. So yeah, I kind of think of, you know, I think of Swan, I think of Fold as amazing, amazing on-ramps for people getting used to Bitcoin. And where Unchained Capital comes in is a little bit further down that journey where you're ready to take control of your private keys. You've been maybe saving Bitcoin for a while and would like to start leveraging it a little bit for everyday purchases. Yeah, so it's kind of a, like from the client funnel or the Bitcoiner funnel, right? You have these great stacking apps up at the top. People are learning about Bitcoin. They're getting educated. They kind of take control of those private keys. That's really what we believe is like the first major step into becoming like part of the Bitcoin economy for long term. And that's where we want to step in and help those people at that point.
Yeah.
Dude, on that note, how does the vault system work exactly? I skimmed, but have not actually gotten to the Year of Multisig article or the more recent of yours. The actually, I think y'all were just talking about that just a minute ago.
21 million is non-negotiable.
There you go, that one.
So
yeah,
I can talk a little bit about vault creation. So we use we consider ourselves Bitcoin native financial services, and what that means to us is we, for as much as possible, push private keys into the hands of our clients. And the best way to be able to offer sort of traditional financial services is through multi-sig quorums and creative structures of them. So for our vaults, we have 2 of 3 multi-sig addresses that, as a client, you create using 2 of your private keys. So if you have 2 hardware wallets, a Ledger, a Trezor, we're working really hard on being able to support cold card in the future. So if you have any one of those hardware wallets, you upload an extended public key on our platform. So you're never sharing any private information with us, just extended public key information. And then we combine 2 of your XPubs with 1 of our public keys to build your own unique address. So really, we're just helping to facilitate security for you long term. Like, you're still holding your money because you have 2 out of 3 keys, and we're there providing like a nice user experience, as well as if anything happens to one of your keys, we can step in and help sign transactions. And then on the other side of our business for loans, once you have a vault with us, you can easily transfer from a vault into a loan, and really you're moving from one multi-sig address to another multi-sig address. In the loan multi-sig address, you get to hold 1 key, we hold a key, and then a neutral third party holds that 3rd key. So what's really changing is like the structure of the multi-sig quorum. And we think this is a pretty interesting and unique way to be able to offer financial services with Bitcoin. It uses the inherent security properties of it.
Yeah. To be perfectly honest, I've looked into the Bitcoin collateralized loans quite a bit for like rates and all that good stuff. And the 3 or 4 companies I think now that are offering it, and you guys are the only ones that do multi-sig. And I'm like, I can't even begin to entertain any of the other ones. Like, I'm just like if I'm just handing my Bitcoin over, particularly like the risk, Bitcoin drops 50% sometimes, it's volatile, things get crazy. You don't know. You don't really know. If I can't see it, if I'm not holding a key, like I just can't imagine trusting a company like that. I mean, I've lived through the Mt. Gox days, and have been burned numerous times in this space. So I don't trust anybody. And I just love that. I would never even, I don't care how comfortable you guys' shirts are, which they are, but I would never wear it if y'all didn't have multi-sig on those collateralized loans. Just so you know.
Yeah, I think the big difference between the way that we do loans and some of our competition out there is that you are always, if you want, an active participant in the security of your funds, right? You get to hold 1 key, which means you still don't have control over your funds, but you can always verify cryptographically that the money is where we say it is. And you have, you have the ability to collaborate with either us or the third party company that we include in the quorum if something happens to either one of us. So there's a channel or an external spending channel in case something happens to one of the parties. And contrasting that to some of the competition, you set up an account with them, you deposit Bitcoin into an address that they provide to you. A lot of times they're taking that Bitcoin, they're commingling it with their other clients' Bitcoin. They may be rehypothecating it, which is lending out that Bitcoin to short sellers or speculators or something. You don't really have any insight into where your Bitcoin is after you've given it up. But with our loans, there's certainly still absolutely risk with taking out any sort of loan off of Bitcoin as collateral because the price is so volatile. But we believe that the way we're doing it is the most closely aligned with like the Bitcoin ethos of not your keys, not your coins, don't trust, verify, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's definitely, I see it as, I kind of look at it even more as a step a little bit further to proof of reserves, because it's not even explicitly proof of reserves. It's proof of reserve strictly for your account and your business. So anything that I am doing, I have an explicit reserve and an explicit balance of Bitcoin that I even have, a key of. And it's not just that, you've published, this is how many accounts and all my liabilities, and we have this amount of Bitcoin to cover it. It's no, here is your explicit account and here is your explicit reserve that we are covering for. It's the
Bitcoin way, man. It's the Bitcoin way, like we were talking about earlier, and that's the companies like Bitcoin only companies doing it the Bitcoin way is the wave of the future, and I'm glad we're at that stage now. One of the things I love about Swan is that we want you to take your Bitcoin out of our custodial partner addresses and put it into your own wallet, hold your own keys. And we're going to, we don't have any incentive for people to be holding, our custodian to be holding your Bitcoin for you. We have absolute incentive to get you to take it off and to teach you how to do that, and walk you through it if you need help. And then we can send them to people like Unchained and say, hey, this multi-sig is the best way to do it. This is super simple. So I love that. I mean, that's the Bitcoin way in my mind. So thanks, Guy. I really appreciate your time, man. I know you have to get back to reading. What are you reading today?
I am reading Arthur Hayes's on the BitMEX blog, Choose Your Fiction. Have y'all read that?
Nice. No, I haven't read it yet. I'm gonna have to listen to it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. You'll like it.
It turns out he's got quite the way with words. All in, motherfuckers.
That's what's up. All right, guys. Dude, it was awesome to get to chat with y'all. Y'all have fun.
The voice of Bitcoin. Later, Guy. Thanks.
Later.
Hey, Brady, we've got a couple people in the waiting room, they say, but I don't see them or how to add them. Maybe.
I do. I see Daniel and Phil. Okay. Mr. Say, do you want me to add? Who do you want to go first?
Bring Daniel in first, and then we'll do Phil.
All right, let's go. So Daniel Prince is joining us. He's got a new podcast on the scene, Once Bitten. We'll wait for him to get his audio going here.
All right. And Daniel, you're on mute so far, so unmute yourself. I was hoping the question would be from his daughter. Usually he leads off his podcasts with a really hard-hitting question from his daughter.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I've got no sound on my side. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay, cool. I don't know, man. Like you guys all doing such great work. I just feel I have to represent from the other side of the pond. Seems to be so much innovation going on in the space in the US and North America. So I guess the big question is, Corey, I've asked you this before, but perhaps you could expand on it again. When Europe, guys, and that's open to everyone. The other side.
So I'll go first. It's interesting. The banking relationships are really everything for a company that's selling Bitcoin, and so you actually kind of do have to go country by country. So you kind of do have to hit a decent amount of scale to want to take on another country, especially if your starting point is the US, and we feel like we have 0.00001 or whatever % penetration of our home market. And there are also such good options in some of the other attractive markets. And, so right now we're just focused on, doing as well as we can with, what we think is probably like 50% of the total addressable market for people who would be buying Bitcoin. Comparing our average basket size to some of the other services around the world, our users are buying about 3x more per month. So it just kind of makes sense to go super hard here and penetrate the US as much as possible. Plus, it's just kind of like in the early days when you're small, it's way more fun to just have like brothers in arms around the world and just be able to like help great businesses grow, like Bull Bitcoin and Amber and Bitteroo. And, it looks like the Coin Floor got their thing going. They just launched DCA for the UK a couple weeks ago. You got Bitter and Ruben Waterman for much of the EU. You just saw, I think, another app just launched in Italy specifically with Salabank that looks pretty solid. So, people are finding more options and not having to like jerry rig things together with like buying into Tether and then, setting up some weird thing or, using Revolut to connect to some bank in some other jurisdiction. Like some entrepreneur in each region is starting to figure out how to, join the Church of Satoshi and follow the friar into the land of dollar cost averaging. So we're happy right now for the near term, but definitely, we have the conversations underway with lawyers. We have a global law firm. I know what it costs. I know what it will take. We do have the relationships, at least we have the connections to get those banking relationships. It just doesn't really make sense. We're a small team, like Will and his team, like it just doesn't make sense to add all that overhead when we have so much room to grow here.
Yeah, to create a Bitcoin business, you have, number one, a whole extra level of scrutiny, but you also still need to rely on the same people that everyone else does. Your banking partners, our payment processing networks, your favorite local regulatory body. And to create a business that is, number one, successful, getting traction that people like, but also fits in its own Tetris into its local context, is not a simple thing to do. And so as we look out, and we'd want, being a Bitcoin company, we want our service to be freely available to anyone around the world. And that's the ideal. But getting it in even just a given region is a massive lift. And so for Fold, we personally think we have so much more that we need to do to get the servers right for even users in the United States. That roadmap alone is so large. And I really totally agree with Corey, is that, I get entrepreneurs from all around the world reaching out to me saying, hey, why aren't you in Nigeria? And I say, give them the spiel. And then I'm like, well, here, I'm happy to help you, give you information on how you could set it up in Nigeria as well. Because I'm a big fan of, again, making these types of services decentralized in the way that multiple entrepreneurs are creating them all around the world strengthens the network and application side of this, of us overall. And so I want to get to the UK and Canada are our next regions. So we will be there. But, for the rest of the world, I encourage this, this community, people like us to, help entrepreneurs doing things, in areas that are not well served right now.
For Unchained Capital, our multi-signature vaults are available internationally for both business and retail clients. And then our lending service is available on a case-by-case basis for certain international countries. We kind of review them individually, but we have made loans to international clients. They tend to have like higher requirements, so generally higher than $100,000 for an international loan. And then of course our open source tool Caravan is available to anyone 24/7, 365. It's just live on GitHub. You can check it out.
Cool. Thank you so much, guys. And to your point, Will, I do feel this in the Bitcoin space, and I think it's a great way that we're heading. Legacy business has always been around competition. Do you feel that businesses now that are being built in the Bitcoin space are more collaborative rather than competitive? And is that the way we need to head? And that's for the floor as well. Sorry, not just that, Will, but just following up on your point.
We're if Bitcoin had to bootstrap its own network, we're having to bootstrap the actual application layer and how people start to interact with this. And the faster we can experiment, the faster we're going to get to the right ways to onboard, the right services to offer, the right incentive structures. And so, personally, I was in a Zoom the other day, and I got paired it was on the topic of working together in the future. And I was randomly paired with the BitRefill guys. And it was like, hey, we've actually, BitRefill and Fold actually have common origins and started actually in the same office. And since then, we are on the surface competitive, but we tackle our own niche. BitRefill is doing amazing with global reach and allowing people to access traditional retailers with Bitcoin wherever they are in the world. Fold is doing its own thing here, mostly in North America. And we have both learned quite a bit from each other. And so I know Fold is better off taking that approach. And I hope to see more of that from others because it's worked for us so far.
Yeah, and at Unchained, I think I can agree with that. Like we recognize at this point that multi-signature use among even Bitcoiners is such a small percentage of even Bitcoiners themselves, which is also already such a small niche. So we've been spending a lot of time over the last year, educating Bitcoiners or educating people about Bitcoin with our content, as well as trying to build the open source multi-signature ecosystem and give people a few more options to just try out multi-sig, because we really don't want to be the only, I think right now it's us and Casa are doing sort of collaborative custody multi-signature, which is where you have keys distributed among multiple parties. And for a robust Bitcoin ecosystem, we shouldn't be the only two companies doing that. We should really grow that, and all companies should be, if possible, holding a minority of the keys so that we reduce the amount of central points of failure in the system. We don't want to see any more of those Mt. Gox or Bitfinex or Quadriga hacks anymore. Like, with Bitcoin and multi-signature in particular, we can distribute keys so that those types of attacks are less likely.
Let's
Right,
pull
Dan.
in Mr. Sue.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate your questions and
Thank
popping
you.
in with us, man.
And Dan, you're welcome to stay on, by the way. We're not going to kick you out. We know you. If you feel like it, or you can jet, either way.
I'll stick around for a bit. Thanks very much.
Awesome. All right. So this is, of course, another podcaster. And Phil, let's see, I think he's popping in now. Yeah, here he is. Phil has a podcast called A Boy Named Sue. And his podcast spent like 100 episodes, not talking about Bitcoin at all, talking about all kinds of things. And he's recently fallen down the rabbit hole and is doing some awesome Bitcoin interviews, always in the tank tops too. What's up, Phil?
Always. Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Phil,
Yeah, what you got, man?
is that an Unchained shirt I see in the background there?
It is, I wanted to be decent. I really did. But I'm at home at work and I'm comfortable. But I thought it was important to at least bring it out so people watching can see what the back of the shirt says, which is Phil, tell us what it is. Other Phil.
Yeah, friends don't let friends sell Bitcoin. So
There you go.
Podcaster Phil is also a Austin-based Bitcoiner. I hope I didn't box you too much, man. But Unchained Capital is based in Austin, Texas. So he's been by the office, been to a few of the Bitcoin developer meetups that Justin Moon and Buck Burley have put on.
Shout out Mooniversity. I've played around with that in quarantine, and I'm looking forward to him adding more stuff to it. But apparently he's working on some pretty cool stuff. But yeah, if you are going to a BitDev meetup, you should come to this one or New York or start your own wherever you are, because I learn so much every time I go. And like Brady says, Bitcoin is definitely a renaissance. And I'm not the same person I was in November of all things, but
Right?
It's really been awesome. Like every day is a new journey. So,
The dawn of the Bitcoin Renaissance. We were talking recently about how Bitcoin, well, we were actually writing a chapter of The Gift of Bitcoin, which is the book that comes along with a Give Bitcoin gift. And chapter 5 is about the optimism of Bitcoin. And a lot of it was about how Bitcoin changes us as people individually in very meaningful ways. And the amazing thing about that is that it happens from a very small, simple fact, which is just the truth of sound money, right? And how it extends our time preference. And from that simple, kind of fundamental difference in the fiat money and Bitcoin, you get all these follow-on effects. And it's amazing how fast it can change your life and change your habits. And so it's amazing.
yeah, I definitely agree. I think I'm more, I guess, fortunate than others because I was like automatically on the libertarian side. So the whole free market thing was there, but just challenging myself and learning like how Bitcoin works. I mean, Jan's book is like a great place to start, and just learning about Lightning and on top of that, and it's really kind of jumping into the sovereign individual thesis of embracing technology and doing what you can and with what you have now. And I guess it goes hand in hand with having a low time preference as well, because you're taking in all this knowledge, but then you're also preparing yourself, for the needed skills that you'll need for the future, because this is all exponential. So it's a lot, but I'm taking it day by day, and I'm actually like surprised of how I've been able to like take these complex ideas in like a way that's like a fun everyday like analogy that I can understand. So, more knowledge, please.
So Phil, do you have some questions for our guests?
Yeah, I do. I kind of muted out there. I was in like the Zoom mempool, so apologies if some of these questions have been answered already. Let me see here.
The Zoom mempool.
Right. Thankfully, I wasn't Zoom bombed.
You've been included in a block now, so.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, no orphan blocks for this guy, please. So Will, I have a few questions, but I wanted to start with this one because as stacking sats and just hodling becomes the norm, what innovations and capabilities do you see being applied and leveraged with UTXO sets other than just like collateral? Because right now, I think that's kind of like the only thing that we see, but just kind of curious of what your take on that is.
Anytime you have a scarce resource, you say, well, what should this be used for, or what can it be used for? And those lead you to different answers. And I think, you can see the time stamping stuff that we've seen from little different than the storing assets. You see on the Lightning Network, messaging apps being built out for kind of unstoppable messaging platforms. And the cool thing about Bitcoin is that it really doesn't matter who builds and uses UTXO sets, because at the end of the day, the market is going to price that. And if that use case is supported and deserves that position or that ability, to be in the UTXO sets, then it will be supported. But if not, the incentives just won't be there, and it will fizzle out. So I'm actually really curious to see what happens to the Veriblock stuff, the Lightning messaging, to see if the value of those services actually matches up with it's right to be in the sets.
Yeah, totally. And the coolest thing I've loved to learn about Bitcoin is just like the honesty of how we actually have an actual free market working in action, and everyone's just freaking out about it. That's why all this liquidation is happening in the on the legacy side of that. But yeah, I'm really hopeful for what's to come. And then we can't go without mentioning mining and how that's helping out with energy and whatnot. Another question: do you see Fold actually creating a wallet of your own, non-custodial? So after they stack their sats and they're brand new to Bitcoin, eventually they want to take full custody and send that to a wallet. So have y'all thought about that, or maybe it's like something cold storage along those lines?
Yeah, you know what? We think about this all the time because we set out to do basically one thing: is reimagine the onboarding process for someone into Bitcoin. And so historically, that has been connecting to an exchange, going through KYC, buying Bitcoin, having to get a wallet to take it off the exchange. There's just a vast amount of steps that are so valuable to why Bitcoin is here and why it's such a great thing. But for an everyday person, it's pretty daunting. And Phil said it doesn't need to be, but we need to preserve, to Phil's point, the value system of Bitcoin. And the end goal should be holding private keys. That's why we are all here. And so it's incumbent on Folds, if we're opening up a new way for people to get on board in the system, and we're doing it without any private keys, without any KYC for some people, and without all of the traditional time it takes to go through an exchange. Now we have to we're welcoming in all these new users, and it's incumbent on us to educate them about this asset and how to use this asset, best practices. And so for us, similar to Swan, is we have a huge responsibility to hand off to the Phils of the world in a great way, to educate why their services are valuable, and why Fold is not, can get you to a certain stage of it. But, this is an ecosystem, and it takes an ecosystem to do it. And so will Fold build it? We are really good at building consumer facing, fun products and services that just delight people, get them in there, start to learn about it. But we are not the experts at building non-custodial and multi-sig, solutions. And so we have to think about, our resources, our time, and what we are really good at, and then partner with those who are really good at their thing so that we can bring this ecosystem together and create more kind of links in the chain. So I think before Fold would ever build it, we would want to really look to the leaders who are already providing those great services.
Yeah, and that's the coolest thing about Bitcoin too, is it just brings people of like so many different talents into their own little niche that they can like contribute to it. Because again, Bitcoin doesn't care who you are, as long as you have something of value to contribute to it, then something's gonna come out of it. But something unique that you guys have done, I haven't seen anyone else do it, but the anonymous account option. So I'm just curious how that came about and how you were able to take advantage of that, as well as kind of deal with the prior KYC kind of standards, and how you were able to kind of get around the.
That is the oldest sign-in option for Fold.
Is it? I'm a newbie, so.
I know, and it was our first thing. Number one, we feel like taking is the least amount of data is also something that we strive to do, and again, speaking to why doesn't Fold go all over the world is that we are situated in a given compliance and regulatory context, and with that, we are working with gift cards and rewards, with both have very specific designations in different areas. And so for us, we want to always preserve and have our Bitcoin, our business, not just give Bitcoin, but reflect the values of Bitcoin. And so we are always going to be looking for areas that, number one, keep us within compliance, but number two, if we don't need to do it, or we can create something new for users, we will pursue that. And so the anonymous login is definitely one of those. Now, you'll start to see as the more Fold is starting to get integrated into legacy financial systems, and we move out of some of the carve-outs that we currently enjoy, you won't be able to do anonymous mode on everything, right? There are going to be limits, and that's because business that's regulated. It is something that is, I think we are proud of those types of things within Fold, and we are going to do our best to preserve them and amplify them in any way that we can, while also making sure that we stay on the right side of the law.
So in regards to the law, I mean, how have you been able to just hop over those legal hurdles and processing fiat? Because again, that's still going to be like the easiest thing for no coiners down the road. And then how do you transition from that fiat onboarding process to a circular economy of Bitcoin? Because businesses like yours and Unchained Capital is pretty genius, because it's just kind of like one ride down the slide, like from Fold to Unchained, because after they learn about that, or even, of course, Swan too, but like, after they learn about that, then they want to really enhance and leverage their custody and knowledge and keeping their Bitcoin safe. So I guess like first, how do you get rid of the fiat like on-ramping, or how are you currently processing that to make it feasible? But then how do you kind of kick that out the door and do that circular Bitcoin economy?
Yeah, so we started accepting credit and debit cards in September or October of last year. We did that to open the floodgates and tear down any barriers between people who want Bitcoin, interested in Bitcoin, curious, have it, want to stack more, and Fold. And so doing so, my favorite journey to see is those coming in, spending on their credit card and debit card, and 15 to 20%, depending on the month, will start spending with Lightning to take advantage of the higher incentives that we give. So we give more cash back when you spend with Lightning. Yeah. And what this starts to do is that they're now spending Lightning and spending their Bitcoin, but they're earning more Bitcoin. They're making sure that their HODL stack is always kept nice and topped up to where they want to be. But the cool thing is all the Bitcoin, none of it is being sold anywhere at this point. It's all being reallocated or redistributed to people who are earning rewards. And so we are bootstrapping the circular economy within Fold to having this rewards and cycling both as payment and payouts to users. And so we want to support that journey as much as possible. And I think things like Strike and other things point to even kind of taking it one step further with the direct USD into Bitcoin is interesting as well. But again, just another experiment in how to spur people to go further and further down the rabbit hole. And with our payment processing today, we have partnerships with payment processors, banks that currently allow us to do that. The main thing is that Fold operates in we have gift cards and rewards, which have really generous and good regulatory designation to allow us to do the things that we do. But again, as Visa comes more into more in the platform and things like that, it's things could change or evolve.
Yeah, just real quick on that, I saw a CoinDesk article, and it was just kind of like a warning to the FSB about stable coins and how like each country should reconsider how they evaluate that. So, I mean, stable coins are going to be stable coins, whatever. It's not Bitcoin. We all know that. But with, I guess, the world being more keyed in on crypto and watching this fiat apocalypse kind of happen before our eyes, I mean, how do you look at Bitcoin and think of that? And like this question's for Swan and Unchained and everyone here as well. I mean, what do we think about that? And I mean, I think the answer should be just take the cypherpunk attitude and don't ask for permission and just do it. But there's consequences on that end too, because if you just step too far a certain direction, then you might get your hand slapped. So I don't know, just moving forward, like how do we think about that?
Hey, I love that question. And I also want to just welcome Sergey into the chat here from Bit Refill. Thanks for joining. That's probably a really good question for you too. I don't know if you heard what Phil just asked, but maybe you want to take that one. Oh, we don't have audio for Sergey. All right.
Do I hear me now?
Yeah, we do. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so the question is how to generally deal with potentially hostile regulators. Is that the question, or what is the question more specifically?
I mean, just to
Pretty
rephrase,
much.
like kind of like where to draw the line and how to think about, your business and having, employees and your name out there, but also trying to balance that with the cypherpunk ethos of Bitcoin and trying to make sure that we're on, sort of firm, unassailable, decentralized as possible ground for the future, maybe.
Because essentially you have to think back, like why Satoshi made this. It's permissionless. And so he didn't ask for permission when he made Bitcoin. He just did it. So
yeah, but it is anonymously.
Yeah.
You have to remember that. And it's this is a big part of the whole thing. I don't know, like guys like me said that the Americans were going to crack down on the stable coins in 2017. They didn't. So guys like me have been wrong for several years now, and have trying to shut their mouths. I don't know. I think that it is. I think you should follow the law, right? I mean, you can't not do it under. Well, I guess there are some examples, especially from the 17 era, of people who actually didn't and landed in a good place, but many landed in bad places, and I guess it depends on your own personal risk strategy. I think there's plenty you can do that is safely within the realms of what is within the law, and to the extent that, there's probably a point that is where if the laws become too prohibitive, when it becomes time to start moving the company to other jurisdictions and so on. I guess that's what we've seen with Binance and so on as well, doing that very actively. Maybe that's even their competitive advantage. So yeah, I don't know. About the stable coins, we'll see. And there's a bunch of other topics that are a little bit like that, and I think it's part of it's part of every investor conversation that I think all of us have. Is like, what if the regulatory environment changes? And it's like, yeah, well, that is what if, but I usually tell them that it's more likely that Coinbase disappears than that Bitrefill disappears. Well, it's simply because of like the number of countries and the type of laws that cover our respective businesses. It would probably be much easier to shut down Coinbase than to shut down Bitrefill. But that said, you could probably shut us down in a particular country and so on. Like, it's not unthinkable that we'd get shut down in the US or something. I don't know, but we haven't seen any tendency towards that. But I think from our perspective, like we've we've had countries come and go a little bit. We had a very active business in India, and then India got shut down. Now India is back. We had a big business in Nigeria, and that got shut down, and then came back, so on. So we've like also a little bit learned about that regulatory environments come and go a little bit, and
Yeah, and I
not sure
guess
that
it
answers
really
the question.
no, that was perfect, man. I mean, it's a hard question to answer, but I think it really just goes back to the notion of decentralization and Bitcoinizing the globe. Because, like you said, in other countries, I mean, it varies, but you know, as long as there's a few of us in every country, it's like, yeah, they're gonna have to play a lot of whack-a-mole to get done what they want to get done, or they just embrace it.
Well, I mean, for one thing, I would look outside. We're all in different parts of the world, all suffering under one and the same problem. Everybody agrees that it's a problem. There's a broad international consensus to the extent that has never happened probably in the history of the world. That like the shared understanding of the problem and the shared appreciation of the problem. And every country wants to get rid of the problem, and yet they're not successful at collaborating and stamping out this particular problem, right? And so compare that with a scenario in which countries decide to stamp out Bitcoin. Well, you know, one of them can, but it's probably going to spread out somewhere else. Sorry for the analogy.
No, that's a
In which
good.
we're the problem.
We hadn't talked about coronavirus yet, so you know, you have to bring it up. I think we're obligated.
Had to be done.
Yeah. All right. Before we run out of time, I wanted to circle back to Phil's recent article on 21 million is not negotiable, and I think all of us here can agree with that and can comment on it if we have time. Phil, can you talk about some of the misconceptions or misunderstandings that these people who are sort of pro-inflation and concerned about the future security of the network, and therefore suggesting that we need to extend the block reward beyond its intended schedule?
Well, there's a bunch of different components to that, right? Like I think one of the reasons that I wrote the article was I was recently triggered by an article written by a crypto publication that suggested that Bitcoin's monetary policy governors needed to adjust the supply to increase security. So that kind of led me down this path of writing this article, and it was really just to answer the question: will Bitcoin be secure once all 21 million Bitcoin have been mined? In the first article I wrote, they're kind of tangential. The first article I wrote is all 21 million Bitcoin already exist. So starting from that framework, then you're able to kind of look at this problem like, well, why is it secure in the first place? It's because Bitcoin is the only scarce currency. It's the only currency that has 21 million. But then a lot of times people kind of make, kind of allow for some wiggle room there. Like, yeah, the supply is 21 million, but they're not already all mined. So therefore they, don't exist, and the supply could be changed. But I think what we all have to do individually as full node operators is just make that decision, right? If you are running a full node, you are a Bitcoin monetary policy governor. You get to decide what the supply is going to be. So making that decision early and just being loud about it, I think, is important. So for me, my node, 21 million is non-negotiable. I'm hoping that your nodes are the same. And then the other issue is that a lot of times people will be evaluating Bitcoin, measuring it in another currency, right? And that's by default what we all tend to do. We tend to measure Bitcoin in US dollars. We look at the cost of securing it in US dollars. But from the network perspective, it has no way of evaluating itself in another currency. It just adjusts depending on or in order to maintain a consistent block reward and the supply schedule. And throughout 11 plus years of a wildly fluctuating price and 1000x percentage in hash rate increase, like Bitcoin has maintained a fixed supply, a consistent schedule, and that's even including inflation bugs. That's the other issue that people like to bring up is, well, there's already been an inflation bug, and what we can do is we can all assume that there will be additional inflation bugs in the future, but as full node operators, we can make a decision right now to say my node won't follow any chain that has inflation. And what I'll do instead is I will take the inflation coins, sell them for more Bitcoin, which has a supply of 21 million. So that's where that social consensus and technical consensus kind of meet.
Right on. Thanks, man. Jimmy Song has joined us. What's up, Jimmy? Thanks for hopping in.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I just hopped in. I just finished my other show, so I was already at my podcasting area. So I'm happy to do it because it's very convenient. But what are you guys talking about?
So Jimmy,
what am I here for?
Yeah, so let me set the context. So every week we have a couple of people on at the beginning of the show, and the format the first month or two of this has been just to kind of chat for 45 minutes to an hour. We decided to bring back the video call-in format that we initially started last fall for Give Bitcoin. Seems to be going pretty well. We got Daniel Prince from the One's Bitten podcast in here. We got Phil Gibson from Mr. Sue podcast. Guy Swan was on earlier. And of course, we've got our featured guests, Will Reeves from Fold and Phil Geiger from Unchained. And then we also got Sergey from Bit Refill joined us as well. We were just about to jump into a little bit of Corona and macro as relates to Bitcoin chat to finish this off. And that doesn't take much prep. So how are you doing personally? How's Austin? How are you seeing this whole thing roll out, and how is it all going to affect Bitcoin over the next, few months, few years, et cetera?
Well, I mean, Austin's, I think, pretty much like every other place, it's completely dead. I mean, it's weird. Downtown is dead, but if you walk around your neighborhood, you see people walking around. They're all like kind of going crazy, right? Because they're going to go do something, and that involves taking walks or going on a run or riding on a bike or playing basketball in their yard or whatever. Just anything that doesn't involve touching other people. And it's kind of a weird, surreal world, and I'm sure all of you can identify with that. As far as like what's been happening, the thing that's most concerning to me aren't pandemics or viruses and things like that. Those have happened throughout human history, and those will continue to happen. As tragic as they may be, it's something that we've had to deal with, something that nature kind of causes. The thing that's much more concerning to me is entirely human cause, and that's this giant bucket of money printing that's been happening at the Fed. Last I checked, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $6.5 trillion. I suspect that'll be closer to like 10 trillion by the time this is all over. But it's an insane amount of money. I've been keeping track of the Federal Reserve's M2 money supply charts. At the beginning of this year, it was M2 money supply of USD was $15.3 trillion. As of March 30th, it was 16.7 trillion, an increase of 8.5% in monetary expansion. I just want to remind everybody that Bitcoin will soon be entering an era of less than 2% annual monetary expansion as of next month. So that in itself is, I think, the main way in which Bitcoin benefits is that there is a significant amount of monetary expansion. Now, a lot of that is to combat the monetary contraction that is currently happening. A lot of international loans or sort of any international settlement has to happen with the dollar ever since Bretton Woods in 1944. So as a result of that, a lot of the loans are in dollars. So as we get sort of a liquidity crunch, there's a huge demand for dollars out in the world. So dollar will be okay for the time being. But that also means that all of these other currencies that aren't the dollar, that don't have a large demand or a large population or a large base or a large GDP to back it up against, they suffer way more than the dollar. Because if you are in these countries and you need to settle in the dollar, you're going to get rid of your current country's currency and go get the dollar. And as a result of that, what ends up happening is that the dollar doesn't suffer as much of an increase in prices, but the other currencies do. So in a sense, the U.S. is exporting a lot of the inflation to the third world, which unfortunately, they're going to be the ones to suffer first. We will eventually suffer for all of this. And this is why Bitcoin and gold are becoming enormously popular at the moment. People recognize this reality and they want to do something about it. And Bitcoin is one of the few ways in which you can store value that's independent of the US dollar. Stock market, bonds, real estate, all of that is heavily and very closely linked to the dollar, whereas Bitcoin at least is nominally and gold as well, separate and not as closely linked.
Hey Brady, can you switch us to gallery view on the broadcast real quick?
Done.
All right, cool. So I just want everybody to raise a hand if you think that the Fed will print more than $10 trillion because of this COVID crisis.
How do you guys what's the mental process to land at an answer to that question?
So, I'll share a couple of other numbers. It turns out that Jimmy's actually a Fed bull if he thinks it's going to stop at 10 versus some other folks that are out there. Jim Bianco from Bianco Research, who's a pretty regular guest on Macro Voices with Eric Townsend, he and his team have done the calcs and are basically estimating 45 to 47 trillion.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's more than the GDP. All of the real estate in the United States is 31 trillion. That's way more. That could buy every single piece of property in existence.
Because it's not all just for the U.S. As you noted, there's a dollar shortage with basically global debt being denominated in the U.S. dollar, and so to backstop everything that's broken, all the crap corporate loans, all these triple B loans that are actually junk, all of these failing, government loans to, Southern Mediterranean countries, et cetera. All of that all told, he says 45 to 47 trillion. Chamath came out about 10 days ago at 50 to 60 trillion.
Okay, that's way more than GDP, I think.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But that's the kind of situation that we're in. So basically, if you wanted to backstop all these things, you're either going to have to print that money and make it available to these people to essentially monetize all of this broken debt, or you're going to have to see defaults. But there isn't a third way. So
at which point does inflation kick in, according to this estimate?
Well, that is the third way, is basically just, the modernization of the debt. That's what all the printing is. That is inflation. So the crisis is deflationary, but then you turn inflationary.
When do we start to notice, common man inflation, noticing price of groceries going up?
6 months, 2021, and it'll be big.
I'm sure there's some third world country that'll collapse in the next couple of years due to hyperinflation. I think that much is certain. The economic burden of having to settle in the dollar while trying to not having enough exports and not enough consumer market to export their goods into, that's going to be absolutely crushing for them. So they'll probably feel it first. It really depends on who you mean by the common man, right? Because there's a common man in the US that's going to feel it much later than the common man in Indonesia, who will probably feel it much quicker.
I think the best indication is when the people at the money spigot start to hurt. If that's possible.
It's possible because they won't have any Bitcoin, or those who don't have any Bitcoin.
Well, so Corey, I'm curious about these numbers. Where did they get the 45 to 47 from? What needs to be unrolled that you need a number that big?
I don't remember every detail of the episode. This is probably March 17th by now, so almost a month ago that I listened to it. But if I recall, it was just basically the Eurodollar system, essentially needing to be propped up or it dies. And that's where most of US dollar creation comes from, is from the Eurodollar system.
Meaning that you need to prop up that
it's just
Europe
that
needs the dollars.
Yeah.
In order to...
Eurodollar is kind of a blanket term. The Eurodollar system just means dollars held offshore. It's just offshore dollars. It basically just means the just like in the US, we know that most money is essentially just created by credit. It's just when you lend money, you create money. We have a credit-based system. It's just that happening globally. So those banks creating dollar-denominated loans for each other, and like Greece having dollar-denominated debt that obviously they can never pay back because they just don't have any money. Or let's take, a country I'm partial to, with half my family being from there, like Turkey. They have a lot of dollar-denominated debt, so they can, they can print lira all they want, but some banker has some inside information and starts shorting it, and the lira starts losing value against the dollar, and you can't run that printer all night.
Yeah, I guess that's why they have like the dollar swap agreements with the foreign central banks and so on. And I think I also saw that, they were providing quote unquote liquidity at like sort of some fixed rate of exchange or something like that in order to prop up those currencies. But
yeah,
I mean, last I read, it was only like 750 billion. I was thinking that seemed kind of low. That's not going to be able to supply that many countries with those kinds of populations and those kinds of GDPs to do that. If you're pouring 6 billion on the state side, that's crazy.
I think what's very clear is that we need to do a macro guests episode next week or the week after, and we'll get like Andy Edstrom and Elizabeth Prefontaine and some people like that in here. Because yes, all us tech founders, podcasters, and engineers are not going to solve the macroeconomic problem, but it is scary. It is definitely scary, and I think at the very least, it does appear that we will be entering, a decade or more of an inflationary environment. And the really scary thing about that, just to summarize all the frickin' podcasts I listen to, is basically what that means for people's asset portfolio constructions. And this goes from every retail investor with a 60-40 stock and bond portfolio to, Ray Dalio and Bridgewater, which has had a really rough year. It basically means that stocks and bonds will move in tandem instead of opposite each other for the first time. And we've had essentially like a 40-year bull run in bonds where all you really had to do was just be long bonds, and you were just like a superstar investor. And that's basically over now.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's where the money goes whenever the Fed prints, right? Like that's where it ends up usually. So
yeah. Anyway, well, so let's do one final question from the crowd just to get off that topic and get back to Bitcoin. It's a Bitcoin podcast. So this is we have a total anon nim in the crowd chat. I'm glad to have some of y'all. This one says, are there any publicly available metrics other than Google Trends that provide indications of the level of Bitcoin adoption / interest? And so maybe somebody can just verbally summarize Clark's dashboard for the audience.
I mean, that's one, but personally, I look at the reports from various exchanges and whatnot. They usually, they don't come out with it very often, but usually they will have some announcement about like how they did in the past quarter of new signups and stuff like that. Pretty much every exchange that I've talked to has said that March 12th was their busiest and most profitable day in a very long time. And that seems to be the case with a lot of different people. So that seems to indicate that like people are voting with their money in a sense, and that's the purest kind of vote that you can have versus just searching for Bitcoin on Google. That's a very early funnel. Signing up for an account on Coinbase or something is much later in the funnel, so I think that's a lot more accurate.
I think just to think of it from like a Bitcoin native perspective as well, the HODL waves chart is, I think, a really interesting view of where we're at in like a exponential growth cycle, or just a growth cycle in general. But what we typically see before large bull markets measured in US dollar is the Bitcoin sitting in addresses gets older and older and older over time. And currently what we're seeing is the 2 to 3 year Bitcoin band has just been expanding. So what that means is that Bitcoin has been sitting or a much higher percentage of Bitcoin that's available has been sitting for between 2 to 3 years. And that's just, I think, very bullish. It indicates that long-term hodlers are continuing to hodl. They're not selling as a lot of the sort of Ponzi scheme skeptics like to claim. But reality kind of shows that people are using Bitcoin to save for the long term. If you look at, how the network is looking today.
Great. Well, Brady, you want to bring us home?
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate everyone joining in. This was a lot of fun. This is the first time we've kind of had people jump in. I think it worked out well. Thanks so much to Will and Phil for joining us from Fold and Unchained. Really excited to hear about the progress that Fold is making, and really excited to get that card in my hands and in my wife's hands so that we can start earning some sats back. Thanks for hopping in, Sergey, Phil, Daniel, Jimmy. Appreciate you guys coming in as well.
Let me finish just with one final shell for Bitcoiner Ventures, which is off and running and is just crossed the 50% mark for filling up our allocation into our first deal. So that's pretty exciting. That's me and Stefan Lavera, Louis Liu, and Jan Pritzker as the partners there. And we've got a great advisory board and some venture partners, including Will here from Fold is helping us find deals and meet investors and things like that. So you can go to bitcoinerventures.com, get more information on that. We're cutting checks into the best Bitcoin companies around the world. And we're doing it through AngelList syndicates, which basically means you just qualify as an investor on AngelList, and then you will always have the right, but not the obligation to participate in the deals. And you can invest as little as $1,000 US. And that's open to people globally. So we'd love to have all Bitcoiners that have a little bit of interest in startup investing check it out and get access to, well, let's just say that one of those companies that's not Swan is represented on this call, although you can't advertise exactly which one for SEC rules. But there are some awesome businesses out there that are growing fast and that should benefit from being the picks and shovels to the bright orange future. And yeah, we're glad to support. And also should mention that the partners for Bitcoiner Ventures take no fees and no carry. And we also invest alongside all of the other folks in the syndicates on the exact same terms. So it is not a profit-making venture. It's just to find and identify and just coordinate investment into great Bitcoin companies.
Awesome, man. We're all in this together. Let's go Bitcoin. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, John.
See you around.
All right.
Good show.
Yeah, that was good, man.